was talking with Tracey before about how she got started, and how she got started with this 4 years ago is part of the story that she's going to tell about her parents and, you know, how she had to deal with their, you know, issues, health issues, and getting ready for that, and how she decided she wanted to help other people. So now she has a company that she's going to mention, helping people go through all of these topics. So let's welcome Tracey Lawrence.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Marcella. I'm so glad to be here today. So yes, I'm Tracey Lawrence, and I am the founder of Grand Family Planning, which is a company that helps families to figure out what they need to do before someone gets sick. When I started that company 4 years ago, my intention was to get people to move on things before they got sick. The reality has been that mostly people call me when they're in crisis, but I still try to help them. Now, while I was caregiving my mom, I kept a journal, and that journal turned into this book. So a lot of the content that you're going to see today is also referenced in the book. This is a published work. It is not self-published. It is published by Post Hill Press. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And today, at the end of the session, I will be giving a quiz. And the first person who answers the question correctly will win a free copy of the book. How's that? Okay, and I will autograph it for you if you like. I'm not presumptuous enough to think that you might actually want my autograph, but if you do, I will be happy to. So that's that. All right, and before I get started with my slide deck, I started asking people as they came in, I would like to know what I can offer you today that would make it worth your while to be here. What brought you here? What did you want to learn from this presentation that would really make you feel like when you left here, you know, you really got what you were looking for? So we have nursing students here who obviously are interested, you know, when they're talking to patients and their families, the kinds of things that they need to get in order, and I will absolutely be talking about that. Would you anyone else care to share why they're here?
My mom is 89. I'm suspecting that she's starting to show some signs of dementia. She also lives alone, is a little stubborn, doesn't necessarily want to put things in order because when she closes her eyes, it's not her problem.
It's so common. Yeah.
And I do approach these conversations every time I can. I don't see her, I only see her on weekends. I will be headed up there after this talk today. I'm seeing that she's slipping in remembering things, simple things, and so I don't want to have my rose-colored glasses on. You know, TV remotes, I'm a little mixed up about this. Microwave, I'm a little mixed up about this. She doesn't drive anymore.
Thank God.
Thank
God.
Good. That was a decision of her own. But yeah, I think I'm seeing these signs, and then, you know, I go on other days and I say, like, no, she's okay, but I don't want to think that.
Thank you.
I know I'm fooling myself.
Very good. Very good.
And as you work with the people that come and ask you, how do we have this conversation? I think from my perspective, because in career-wise I deal with population management and health. How do you direct individuals in the community to approach physicians and clinicians on having the conversation with them? As we generally like to assume that physicians and clinicians automatically have this conversation, but they're not. So
that's an excellent question, and in my experience, physicians, because of the nature of the medical business, because unfortunately that's what it's become, they have this much time to spend with each patient, and that's one of the last things they're going to ask. Unfortunately, we live in a climate where It's all about, do you have insurance? How much will they pay us? How much are we going to be allowed to collect from you? And based on that, they will spend maybe 10 minutes maximum with the patient and then move on down the line. So unfortunately, it's not incumbent on the medical professionals to do it, even though you would think they would. And I'm going to have to say that I think it's much more important for the family to take ownership of that situation.
Okay.
Okay, yes.
So from medical point of view, and as I spoke with some of our ICU physicians, they are stating that the goal of the medicine is to cure the patient. So some of them are not comfortable even initiating those kind of conversations,
Yes.
because as the person comes and is sick or seeking some medical advice, they feel obligated to cure them.
Yes, to
And it's
encourage
not
them to lengthen their
comfortable,
life.
yes, for them to initiate those conversations. I do agree 100% with you that as families, we are kind of in a perfect position to
Mhm.
initiate those conversations.
Yes, and families also have to be aware that when they go to the hospital and they are offered the forms, don't fill them out. If you have healthcare proxy, if you have established, and we'll talk, I'm sorry, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you don't want to go fill out the hospital forms because it will overwrite what your wishes, right? And the hospital form is very like, pick one from column A, one from column B, and that's it, and you're done. So if you had a very specific set of wishes described legally for your healthcare proxy and your power of attorney, that form that you fill out at the hospital can wipe out all that good work. So, and people have to be educated about that. So, because the hospital is only looking to cover their own butt, okay? So that's what that's about.
My father is almost 90 and he's in a senior housing situation.
Mhm.
It's not a true assisted living because they don't have medical staff there 24/7.
Right.
But they have several criteria. You have to be ambulatory. For instance, you can use a walker, but you can't be in a wheelchair.
Right.
You have to-
It's independent.
Right, you have to be continent and you have to be able to handle your own meds. And I can foresee a time where he's not going to be able to do his pills and everything. And so I'm trying to figure out, how I transition him into the next thing, which is going to be
Okay.
a more medically supervised situation. And I
Yes.
just don't know when I have to do that because he really likes where he lives. It's
No doubt.
sort of a group home. It's kind of like a Golden Girls situation.
Yep.
And it's like a family, and he really
Right.
likes the other residents. He would not want to move, and yet there may come a time when he has to.
Yes. And depending on the kind of home that he's in, you might be able to bring in somebody from the outside to help.
Yeah, they call it supportive housing. So it's
Yeah.
like meals and housekeeping and
Mhm.
stuff, but it's
Mhm.
not medical.
Yeah, but you might want to look into hiring, and we can talk about this offline, about hiring a care manager
Mhm.
who can help with recommendations and actually bring it, some group homes, I mean, my mom was in a group home, you can bring in professionals from the outside to help with things like medication delivery and that kind of thing.
You mean like visiting nurse
Yeah,
type thing?
yeah, yeah, and there are other kinds of professionals, but yeah. So you can actually hire people as another layer
Right,
on top of that without moving him, if
Mhm.
that's where he really wants to be.
yeah.
And I always say, no one ever said, take me to a nursing home.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't have a choice, or sometimes it's the choice you have to make. Let's put it that way. But for 90% of people, they want to stay in their homes, and that's probably the best decision that you can make. And by doing the kinds of planning that I'm going to talk about today, you can make that a reality.
So my mom's a little younger than their moms, just a little bit. I'll say she's in her early 80s, and she is of the mindset if you don't talk about it, it'll never happen.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so like starting the conversation,
Of course.
I'm always pushing like we should talk, Mom. What do you want to do? And she's just like, yeah, no, sometime later. I don't want to. So when you say starting the conversation, I need to figure out how to be a nicer, sweeter daughter to be able to get her to really talk about these things, and like really, I need to start a real
Yes.
conversation
Yes.
with her, because she just won't talk about it.
Yes.
And what I'm also looking to do is, I don't wanna get ripped off going to like some awful attorney who's gonna just charge me thousands and thousands of dollars, so I need to know like a checklist of like the things I need to have, like in my, like ready to go, and
Okay.
so that's where I'm looking at.
Okay, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the term, was one term that you used that will make it nearly impossible for you to talk to your mom? Daughter.
I know.
And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I was recently at my own doctor visit, and I guess they must be following like Medicare guidelines or whatever it is.
Oh, boy,
So-
yeah.
No, but so she brought up this whole, have you done this kind of planning, for yourself?
Right.
And gave me a document to fill out, I forget what it's called, but it's like, what are your wishes?
Uh-huh.
that kind of
Is
thing.
it a pulsed document?
No, not both, I'm not a terminally ill.
Yeah, yeah, no, but you don't
Yeah.
have to be. It's
Yeah.
really, it's about, but it's
Yeah.
physician's
So,
orders.
so it's
But-
kind of, when I saw that, I thought, oh, I should really think about this.
Okay, great. Well, you will leave here knowing what documents you need and the kinds of conversations you will need to have. And what I really encourage everybody to do, because a question that I get all the time is, when do I need to start? If you're over 18, you need an advocate. Okay. So, all right, I got a good idea of what we need to do, so let's get started. Okay, so this is my why, my parents. Look how adorable they were. And you can see that that's my father's constant companion, his cigarette. My father was a chain smoker. He was also in the tavern business. He owned bars. He was a fun guy. But by the time he was 56, this was a year before he was supposed to have triple bypass surgery because his arteries were clogged. But they were only able to do 2, and they were losing him, so they were like, okay, that's enough, sewed him up, and sent him home, and he recovered. And he got 20 great years out of those grafts.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he was very, very fortunate. My mom, his biggest fan, was with him through all of his stuff, and in 1984, my father had an epiphany that, number one, he had enough money that he can actually retire or semi-retire, and he owed my mom. He wanted to be good to her because he hadn't been the best husband in the world up until then. So he said, "Okay, we're gonna go have some fun. We're gonna retire. We're gonna travel. We're gonna get a house in South Jersey." And then my father got into boating. He bought a house on the water in New Jersey, and then they found an apartment in Florida, which was also on the water, where he could keep his boat. So, and my father wasn't like rich, but he did okay. And he had enough that he was, and let me frame a reference. In the 1980s and early 90s, when my parents retired, you could get a CD at 13% interest. So my father was brilliant at using CDs so he could live off of his interest. He made the most of what he made, and he had some fun doing it. Now, this picture, 2003, is at my nephew's bar mitzvah. My father had just been diagnosed with something called Pick's disease, which incidentally he didn't have. But he had very serious dementia, and it turned out to be vascular, which made sense, right? Coronary artery disease, vein, clogging, right? So he was having TIAs. He was having little strokes all the time, which were making him hallucinate and changing the symptoms that he had on an ongoing basis. His speech would start to slur, then it would clear up. He'd be seeing things that I couldn't see, children running around, things on fire, animals, whatever. And then he'd have moments of clarity where he would all of a sudden he'd be like, Dad, as I knew him, and I could have a conversation with him, and I call those his visits. That was one of the toughest things I've ever been through because I was nuts about my dad. He wasn't just my father, he was my friend. And so I lost him many times because every time something different happened to him, it was another loss. And the thing that you learn about dementia is that it gives you this uniquely cruel opportunity to grieve the same person over and over and over again. That's when I say dementia sucks, I'm not kidding. 2002, that's me with my mom in their apartment in Florida. When my father died in 2004, he was in New Jersey with the family was together. And my mom came to live with me after my father passed for a little bit, and she really wanted to go back to Florida. That was where she felt comfortable. So, okay, go back to Florida. But of course now, I'm long distance caregiving. My husband and I are running down to Florida. Every vacation, we're not going on vacation anymore. We're going on missions of mercy to check on my mom. Is she getting enough food? Is she, what's going on with her? And you can see a progression here, okay? This is 2002, before my father died. This was 2009, after she'd done a lot of stints going back and forth. That's my husband and mom and me. And then by 2013, my mom was living in a group home. She had become a violent geriatric delinquent. She would get into fights, and if you look closely, you can see it's a little lesion, because she would get into fisticuffs with other residents. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Fight club at the senior citizen.
Oh, she would get angry. And she would fly at people. She got ejected from rehab for threatening people with knives.
Oh my God.
They called the police. They took her to Chilton Hospital in Pompton Plains, and they would only release her to a psychiatric hospital where she was for several weeks. Well, they tried to figure out which poisons to give her to calm her down so she could be returned to a social setting. This is the kind of stuff I went through, folks. Now, okay, so dementia really does suck. All right, forgive the expression, but there's just no better description. But what made me able to cope with all this stuff was that, number one, my parents worked with a financial advisor who my father introduced me to and gave me some counseling on what to do about their money so that they would not be wiped out. Because she had a premonition based on their lifestyle and the way that they did things that a situation such as I was confronting was going to happen, all right? So she counseled us to move a lot of my parents' assets out of their name early in the game, because around that time, Medicaid went from being a 3-year look-back period to a 5-year look-back period. I see the nodding heads, okay, so we know about this. So, so we got some of those assets out of their name, and my father also purchased long-term care insurance. When they got sick, I had no idea what that was. I was a graphic artist. I designed logos. I did websites. I designed collateral. I knew nothing about the financial world. I knew nothing about geriatric medicine. So I learned all this stuff on the fly. And full disclosure, I am not a doctor. I am not an attorney. I am not a geriatric care manager. But I work with all these kinds of professionals, and I can tell you with a great deal of certainty that working with professionals, the right professionals, they're worth their weight in gold. So, it's worthwhile to find the right professionals to work with and then use them. Okay, so why are we so often blindsided by this long-term care stuff? And I call it the myth of retirement. Because when I was a kid, I watched TV, and you see all this stuff, people in their fishing boats, and retirement is all about travel and playing golf and playing tennis and having fun and traveling the world. You stop working, you spend money like you're drunk, you travel the world, you spoil your kids and your grandkids, you do all the stuff you've always dreamed of, and then eventually, gently, you die in your bed at home. Angels escort you to the pearly gates, cue heavenly choir. Ah! Does that really happen? Sadly, most of the time, no. So, what really does happen in retirement? Well, if you put enough money away, you can live comfortably, have some fun, enjoy some adventures, but we all age, and our bodies do start to change. You know, occasionally I'll get an email from somebody saying, you know, we portray seniors the wrong way, and it's the golden years, and all this stuff, and I think of my father who used to say, the golden years is a crock of... So, you know, everyone's different. I say, you know, look, there are people in their 90s who do yoga and who are still in great shape, and that's awesome. But they're not the rule, they're the exception. All right? So, and the really rotten thing is that most of us, at times, our brains begin to fail us. And, you know, I mean, look, there are people in their 90s who die and they're sharp to the last. That happens. But again, is it the rule? No, it's the exception. Few of us enjoy a long retirement without any health problems. Okay, that's just the way it is. We're human and stuff happens. And something you need to know is that 70% of us who turn 65 will have a long-term care event. That is a well-known fact. Okay? And incidentally, if you didn't know this, there are 10,000 people turning 65 every day. Okay, so that's 3.65 million people turning 65 every day in this country, and that will keep happening until 2029. That's the baby boom. Okay? So, think of those numbers, and 70% of them are going to have a long-term care event. How many people is that? A lot. And those people will need a lot of money, and they're going to need people to help take care of them. And losing ground is a terrifying thing, right? Nobody wants to lose ground. But there comes a time in every life where you start to notice that there are things that you used to be able to do and you can't do anymore. I'm 60, happens to me, okay? You gotta think of these things. And the last person an aging parent wants to confide that fear to is their child, okay? But who are the people who want to talk to them about it the most? Their children. But what they will do, and I'm sure some of you here will agree, is that they will lean on their child for a little help. Because that concept is less frightening than admitting that they need a lot more help. Right? Okay? And so this insidious thing happens, right? Where you're like, you're getting these calls from mom and or dad, I got this thing in the mail and I don't really understand it. Can you look at it for me? The doctor prescribed this medication for me and I don't know, I don't understand it. I don't know why they gave it to me. Can you take a look? Whatever it is. So these things start happening gradually, and before you know it, it becomes the unpaid full-time job that ate your life. So, what can be done? Well, first thing is you're going to want to have some uncomfortable conversations. And, a lot of us will avoid it, right? I ain't going there. But then there are those of us who are like, okay, I gotta go there, right? Because mom, dad, they're gonna need me. And I gotta find out, do they have wills? Do they have anything in place? What do they want for the end of their life? And who is going to speak for them if they can't speak for themselves? And that's advanced directives, okay? And that's something that you want to get in writing, working with an elder law attorney, all right? Now, why do I say that specifically? Because we live in a DIY society. Anybody here ever been on YouTube? Okay. Anybody ever look up like how to do something on YouTube, like replace an outlet or how to change a washer in a sink? Okay. we live in a DIY society, and we think that because we have these rich resources on the internet that we can just go and we can download something and take care of it and we'll be done. No. When it comes to legal stuff, don't do that. Because I promise you it will come back to bite you one way or another. All right? You want to talk with an elder law attorney who, first of all, is reputable. Most of them will give you a package deal. Okay? You call them up, you say, okay, this is what we need. What's it gonna cost? And they should be able to give you a package price. No one should ever have to be afraid to pick up the phone because the meter's gonna be running every time they get on the phone with the attorney. There are attorneys who make house calls. So for those of us with older folks who can't really get around too well, there are attorneys, and I work with some of them, who will actually come to the house and get it done. Know that in order for the forms to be legal, they have to be notarized and there have to be witnesses. But very often the attorneys will have paralegals who can come and serve that purpose. But you really do want to work with an elder law attorney in the state in which your loved one resides. Okay? Because there are some subtleties, and it's important to observe them. Okay. Having the talk. All right, so you want to start gently, and a really good way that I found to approach the process is to talk to your parents or talk to the person you want to have the conversation with about other people who are in a similar situation. So it takes that scariness away because you're talking about somebody else, right? And if you look around, you can find those stories. They're not hard to find, right? Here's a good one. Aretha Franklin. All right? Queen of Soul. Awesome human being. Fabulous talent. The world is a poorer place for having lost her. But she died without a will. I'm sorry, Aretha. Why did you do that or not do that? Now her kids and a niece are fighting over the money. Is that right? I'm sorry, I don't think so. It wasn't necessary. She had the kind of resources and assets where that didn't have to happen. Plus, everybody knows her business. And I think that's wrong too. Why should everybody know? Because she didn't do the planning, it's a matter of public record. So when you die intestate, when you die without a will, it's everybody's business and everybody has a say-so. And guess who doesn't? You. Now, this may not matter to you because you're gone, but if you care about your loved ones and you care about what happens to your stuff, then please do this. Okay? All right, and before you have the conversation, know that you're probably going to get pushback. Why? Because, number one, you're talking about stuff that is scaring the bejesus out of the person you're talking to. No one knows better than they that this is an important conversation, but it's scaring them. Because it's bringing up all kinds of other associations. Loss of control is the key, right? Nobody wants to lose control over their life. And when you're bringing up this topic, you're suggesting that they're losing control or that you want to take control. Scares the life out of them prematurely, and they don't want to have the conversation. Plus, if you're their child, right, they don't want to talk about it with you. No matter how old or accomplished you become, they are going to think of you as their baby. Okay? It's just the way it is. So do be prepared for pushback, and before you have the conversation, know what needs to be addressed. Go in armed with the questions, because after poking at the facade a bunch of times, and you should, because you're going to keep circling around, you're going to want to have your list of things, your questions to ask, and the things that you really want to have taken care of. And number one on the list should be the advance directives. That's extremely important. Now, this business of not wanting to be a burden comes up. All right? So a lot of times when you try to have a conversation with an aging person, they will say, but I don't want to be a burden to my children. Well, and that's code for I don't want to talk about this. All right? The thing is that by not having the conversation, you are risking becoming a much bigger burden. Because the child who is going to wind up having to take care of you on some level, somewhere along the line, is going to be placed in a position where they may not have the authority to speak for you. They may have to second guess themselves. They may not know what it is that you really truly want. Okay? And you put so you're putting them in a position of feeling guilty. And if you haven't talked about the resources, how you're going to pay for what you want, then they may have to pony up from their own money and their own retirement account. And one of the things that I try to do is protect the adult children from bankrupting themselves because their parents didn't do the planning. All right? So it's extremely important when that burden word comes up to understand what burden truly is. All right? So you want to be ready to, with stories of people who didn't do planning and became a much worse burden on their children. Okay? Do circle back and never give up. Because once you've started the conversation, when you get the pushback, step away, let it cool off, circle back around another time. And another thing that I highly recommend for families who are trying to have this conversation and they keep getting the pushback, you want another grown-up in the room. And what I mean by that is, you're going to need to have someone who is not a child, who the people in question respect. So it could be a religious person, a pastor or a rabbi, someone of that nature. It could be a golfing buddy, okay? It could be any of a number of different kinds of people who are respected by the parents so that you can have a conversation with them away from the parents, tell them what your fears and concerns are, and get them involved, right? By getting them involved, they can have to talk with the parents and say, look, maybe it's time that you had this conversation. I know I had it with my family, right? So by shifting off some of that and they're getting that great message from someone they respect who is not their child, you're going to help to make your case a lot more, with a lot greater strength, and you're going to start defusing that pushback. Make sense? Okay. So, what needs to be addressed? All right, so we know that we got to talk about the advance directives. That's very important, but we need to talk about what do you have, okay? Do you own your home? Do you have cars? What things do you have, and who owns them? That's very important. You want to have you want to know where the proof is. So if there's a car, you want to make sure that they have the title, or know where the paperwork is regarding that title. I'll tell you a story with my parents. After my father died, my parents had a car. They had a Lincoln Town car, and this was a Floridian car. This was a boat. It was white. It had black windows. My mother gave it to me because my husband had recently had an accident in my VW Beetle. All right, so we drive the car up to New Jersey, and I am hating this car. It's enormous. I can't see out of it. It's just, so I really want to get a new boat, and it's right there. I go to sell the car. My mother has signed the title over to me, but the car was in my father's name, and he never signs it over to her. And my dad's gone, so I can't get his signature, and it was registered in Florida. So I had to get the title transferred from my father's name to my mother's name, then sent back to me in New Jersey, and then I had to go to the NJDMV and then get the car retitled in my name, and then I could sell the car. So that's why you want that kind of documentation, because you don't want to have to do what I did. Okay, what do you want to have happen to your stuff? Now, just a sidebar, a lot of the stuff that people think is valuable is not valuable. Just so you know. I have 3 sets of silverware. Worthless. But, all right. You know, I've got a couple of my mom's Yadro pieces. Worthless. Nothing. But it gave them pleasure, all right? Good. I don't care. But you want to be clear about what you want to have happen with your stuff so that there's no fighting. It's a conversation worth having. And do you want the whole world to know? So if you don't want the whole world to know, then please, please, please talk to an estate attorney. Very important. Okay? You want to have that stuff written down. And by the way, the United States government really wants you to do it also. They won't look at the stuff that you put in your estate documents. They're like, oh, you were responsible enough to do that? Cool. Go forth. We won't bother you. So the tax burden on your family is less. The stress of dividing stuff up has been taken care of. And there's something called trusts, which if you have assets that warrant it, you can be a really great tool for a lot of things. So really do consider working with an estate attorney. What do you want to have happen to you? This is a really important question. You're saying for the doctors who want to prolong your life regardless. Some people want that, and that's fine, but they should put it in writing. Some people are like, you know what? I have dementia, and I can't feed myself anymore, and I'm in diapers. Let me go. And that was not how my parents felt. But it's got to be put in writing. And another thing that I suggest is that you want to identify people who you would have represent you when you're at that phase and have a conversation with them. Because what's on the page is one thing. You want to be able to articulate your deal breakers. You want to be able to say to the person who represents you, look, all right, on this piece of paper, it rambles on about persistent vegetative state, blah, 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 blah. We've all heard this, right? But you can say stuff like, listen, as long as I can sit on my terrace and have a cocktail at 5 p.m. and enjoy the sunset, I'm cool. Let me keep living. But if I can't get up and watch my favorite team on TV and enjoy it, it's time for me to go. You can get that specific, and I think it's important to do that. It's important for the person who represents you to know you and to be able to represent you in that very important time properly. And there's a lot of stuff that those documents, no matter how granular you get, will allow you to express. You can, if you're working with an attorney, and you can also ask. There's a document for care planning that you can put in your portfolio of advanced directives to say what you want your days to look like. You can be very specific, but by working with the right elder law attorney, you can get it done the right way. Yes.
So if you're a person who says, if there's 1 bazillionth of a chance that I have some kind of life, keep me going on every machine possible,
Mhm.
does that person still need like a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I always felt like if you were like, oh, put me on everything, I just want to keep living, like I didn't really need to have...
no, you still need to say it.
Yeah,
You
okay.
still need to say it because you might have a doctor who's sane and who might say to you,
Yeah.
what's the point of keeping this person alive?
Yeah,
But you can say, this is what she wants.
yeah.
I always thought that in the absence of something saying otherwise, that they had to do
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
That's
you're
what I
if you're
think.
DNR,
Yeah.
right, do not resuscitate,
Right.
and you call the EMTs are mandated to do everything possible to keep you alive, right?
Because you called them.
Right.
Right.
But, a lot of people who are in that position, they know the person is DNR, but they see the person is dying and they start freaking out. Because the reality of it suddenly sinks in and they're like, I gotta hold 911. And so they call 911, and what happens? The DNR is completely violated, right? So the medical, the medical profession is based on the idea that, we always do whatever is doable to prolong life.
Right.
But your hedge against that is having a document that says, I want quality of life. And if I have these qualifying events and I don't want to be around anymore, then do not do anything to prolong my life. And you have that right, and you can say that. I have a girlfriend whose father was in his 80s. He had lived life on his own terms his whole life, and he developed a neurological disorder, and he was uncomfortable and unhappy, and he met with, all of his kids came to see him, and he told them, I'm going to stop eating and drinking. And he said, I'm done. He said, but I love you all. He got to tie up all his loose ends with everyone. He stopped eating and drinking. And I know that sounds horrible, but actually, and medical people will tell you, after a couple of days, there's no pain associated with it. It's actually a very humane way to go. We don't think of that, but it's true. So, and he made the decision. And he died peacefully in his own bed, in his own home, without tubes. That was his choice. And he got to say goodbye to all of his kids. My girlfriend, we've been friends since junior high school. And she was able to say goodbye to her father, and she had great peace about the way he went. Because it was his decision, he went the way he wanted to. And everyone was behind him. So, you can't make those decisions for other people. But unfortunately, if you don't have the documentation and you can't speak for yourself, then someone is going to be forced to. And so what I encourage you to do is to think about these things in your own life. I don't want you to be scared of it, because we all know we're all going to die, right? Okay.
Not my
Intellectually. What?
I said not my mother.
Oh, right. But intellectually, we know it's going to happen, right? But emotionally, we have a very tough time dealing with the reality of it and what it's going to actually look like. So by making those decisions sooner than later, while you're still competent, while you're still able to, play a role in your own destiny, is the time to do it. And once you do it, update it. Okay? At least every 5 years. And I'm due for an update myself. So, you really need to revisit, because things change, right? The people you appoint, sometimes they die, they move, they go other places, whatever. You need to keep, you need to keep it current and review it regularly. And here's another one. Who speaks for you if you can't, all right? So you need to pick someone who is your advocate, right? And appoint them, but they need to know about it. Okay? I have this client family, and when I spoke to them about what they were going to do, they're in their 80s, mom is barely ambulatory, but dad caregives her, and he's in his 80s. God bless them. They live in a 3-story house on a lake. And and mom says to me, well, if we need more help, my son will come live with us. And I said, does he know that? Now, as it turns out, they did have the conversation, and they're at that point now, because I met with them like 4 years ago, and I got them to do their estate documents. And now the son, these people bought a house for their son to live across the street from them so he could be independent, but he comes and he stays with them. So and that's cool, because he got his payment, right? Because caregiving is it's a very challenging job, right? And so many people get they fall into it and they do it and they don't get any compensation. They just, whatever's left after the person passes, and that's what it is. But in this case, the family's in a good position. They could do it, so hey. So, but you have to have a conversation with the person you select, because or people always have contingents. All right. This is another one. I talk to people who are older, right? Maybe they're married and they're their spouse is their contingent, and the spouse is older than them. Or a sibling who's about the same age or older. And like, you might want to also have somebody a little younger in case, which is not to say that the younger person couldn't, but you always want to have a plan B, right? If you're going to go that far, have a plan B, right? Always have somebody else on your documentation who is your other spokesperson. Like, yes.
Oh, I just have a quick question about the other situation that you referenced, when the people bought the house for their son.
Uh-huh.
Wouldn't that have potentially counted against them in a Medicaid look back, that they use their
Yes,
assets to?
yes, but they're not.
Okay,
These people are in a situation where Medicaid is not in the picture.
okay.
Okay, unless they live another 20 years, I don't think they're going to be on Medicaid.
Okay.
And the likelihood that they're both going to live to over 100 is pretty, yeah.
Because normally that would be counted as a gift to their son.
Yes, it may, I don't know the details, but they may have even like put it in a trust for him.
Uh-huh.
And if it's an irrevocable trust, then it's Medicaid, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
but 5 years, after 5 years.
Yeah.
All right, otherwise, yes, Medicaid is going to be like, yeah. So, but look, if in the event that they need Medicaid, they've got a lot of resources, and their house on the lake. I mean, they could easily do a reverse mortgage and harvest a truckload of equity and buy their way into whatever place they wanted to go to if that were the case. This is one of those families that one of those few fortunate families where Medicaid probably isn't going to visit them.
Yeah.
And I was
hear
really
about
fortunate.
people trying to put their house on their kid's name and then
No.
within 5 years and, yeah.
Never do that. Never, ever, ever, never.
Yeah.
Because the tax advantages of inheriting a house are much, much bigger. If there's a house left to inherit, no, never. But again, if you're working with a responsible estate attorney,
Right.
elder law attorney, they know that. But if you love somebody, never give them anything until leave it to them. Don't give it to them.
How do you find these elder care attorneys? I mean.
Oh, I'd be happy to share resources with you. Yeah, there are a couple of associations,
Okay.
and also I know people, so depending
Yeah,
on.
that's what I mean, you're just picking one out of the air. So,
Yeah, and also guys, if you like, I have a sign-up sheet. If you want to keep in touch with me and get my resources, you're welcome to give me your information, and I don't share it with anybody, but just all I need is your name and your email. And there are a couple of documents that I have that I'm happy to share. I have a free ebook which has the 8 topics that you must discuss. And I also have a really nice resource sheet. It's a PDF that you can click on the links to. It takes you to places like Medicare, Social Security, a source on long-term care insurance, and it's completely impartial. Things of that nature that will, also there's an organization of estate attorneys that's on that list as well. So I'm happy to share those resources with you. Okay, so what are the consequences of inaction? Decisions must be made. Who gets to make them? Okay, so when you are in a situation where you can't speak for yourself, if you're in the hospital, who do you want making those decisions? Isn't it better if you make your own decisions, right? And have somebody who's able to represent you in those decisions? Someone will pay. Who will it be? All right, so by planning ahead, you can figure out where the resources are going to come from. And for those of us who have children and don't want to be a burden, this is a really important aspect. We don't want to put our kids in a position where they are having to pony up money to pay for the care, for our care, because we didn't want to be a burden. So, and there is a great deal of financial cost, folks. Make no mistake. My parents had long-term care insurance, and my mother's care over 5 years cost me $500,000. $500,000. Okay?
That was out of pocket?
Out of pocket, yes, out of pocket.
That the insurance didn't cover.
The insurance did not cover. Yeah, my mom's, her claim maximum was $189,000, $125 a day. She died the day after she exhausted her policy. I kid you not. I have the documents. My father wasn't going to let her pass until she exhausted that claim. Seriously. And, oh yes, she died on her 64th wedding anniversary. No kidding. So, yeah, she was on hospice for 8 months. 8 months. I couldn't understand why she was still alive. And then when she died, and I got the notice from Genworth that they had released the last $472 from her policy, and it hit her account the day after she died, her 64th wedding anniversary. Oh wow. Dad came to pick her up. He wasn't going to let her go until, and then, hey kid, good job getting the limo, we're going home. So I have a great deal of peace about the way my mom went. Okay, so there's the financial cost. There's the public record thing. That's hideous. How many celebrities? Prince, oh my God. Most of his money went to Minneapolis. Please, why? The emotional cost. That's big. Because I know, especially caregivers, oh my God, caregivers are the most guilty people in the world. Because they're always second guessing themselves, and they didn't, find out what their parents wanted ahead of time, and so they're making all these decisions, and they feel terrible because their parents fought them so much of the way. And if you have the documentation in advance and you have the conversations in advance, the emotional cost is much, much less. Yes?
Yeah, but you have to talk them into it.
Yeah.
Have the conversation.
Yes.
That's the hard part.
Yes, but I already gave you some tips for that.
My mother doesn't trust anybody. I can't bring anybody else into the conversation.
Okay,
She
well-
hates everyone.
Okay.
No, she just trusts everyone.
Okay, well, here's another thing that she needs to understand. Loss of quality of life. All right? So if she doesn't entrust to you, then she's going to be, at some point along the line, her quality of life is going to deteriorate. And my dear, sometimes there's tough love. And you can say to her, you know what, Mom? You don't want to do this? You're on your own. And by turning away and saying, okay, deal with it yourself. Because you don't have to. If she's going to put you in a position, I know, it's squirmy, right?
Listen, my father died 30 years ago, and I've been her right-hand person for over 30 years. So I'm already in that position. I'm up to here in that position, so.
Right, you can quit.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
I was on the phone with the doctor's office yesterday going, I gotta straighten out her bill.
Well, yeah, but you know what? You can quit. I'm not saying you quit permanently, because she'll hire you back.
Oh, yeah.
But then you can state the terms. Look, it's a very hard thing to do. I'm not telling you it's easy. But what I am telling you is that you have leverage. If you are in a position where you are taking responsibility for her life, then you also need authority. Do you have power of attorney for her?
I don't. That's why I've got to find an elder attorney, because she will listen to an attorney.
Okay.
She will listen to an authoritative source.
Okay.
Because she's in that
Then,
generation.
right. So,
That's why
and
I
that's
need
the
to do
grown-up
that.
in the room.
Yeah.
That's the grown-up in the room.
Yeah, that's.
Okay? You need somebody to lay down the law to her, literally.
Yeah, she needs
Okay?
that.
She needs to understand, and it can't come from you.
No.
Because she
Because
will.
I have tried every argument, every way to get to her, and she just is like, yeah, no.
Yeah. And you will, and that won't change.
Yeah.
That's what's known as family dynamics. Okay? You've already set the tone, right? And at this late stage in her life, the only way you're going to change the conversation is by bringing in another party.
Yeah.
Someone and believe me when I tell you, you bring that attorney in, she's going to straighten up and fly right so fast.
Yeah.
She's going to want to prove to him how on top of things she is.
Yes, and that's
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So, okay, good. So you have a plan of action.
I do.
Okay.
Have a backup plan.
Yes. Plan B. Okay. So, all right. So I say it takes a team. Okay, because family protection strategies vary. Aging parents and sometimes adult children. And I've talked to people. I want to talk to my kids, but they don't want to. They don't want to talk to me. They're like they're afraid of it. They keep saying, "Nah, you're gonna live forever." Okay, so family members can be resistant. So you need to have other parties to help advance the conversation. And taking action with the right professionals is far more cost-effective than inaction or improper action. I can't tell you how many people come across my path, and they tell me about these harebrained schemes that they had, where they transferred people's, they transferred their parents' deed into a child's name, and now they can't apply for anything because the brother owns it. Oh yeah, and he gambled it away, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, stuff that you hear. So, working with the right professionals can go such a long way. So it's worth doing the research and finding the right people. So you made a really good first stop here, right? You're getting educated, and you need to seek out resources. And if you like, I can provide you with some more. Professional help is available, and there are lots of different professionals that can help. And I'm one of those professionals who can help. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want you to know that if you want to have a conversation with me, I give free consults. What I generally ask is that people fill out a form so I know what their concerns are, so we can focus on what we talk about. But I'm happy to spend that time with people to educate them and to get them up to speed so they know what to do next. Denial is not a strategy. And waiting is a really poor strategy because we never know what's going to happen. And preparation will give you control when things get uncontrollable. All right, so here's the shameless plug, now available from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, bookstores everywhere. And in the back of the book, you will actually find the 8 topics that you must discuss. It's in here. And it also has some coping strategies, how to turn the conversations around. So when you have someone who's stubborn, things like turning over the car keys. Yeah, that's a bad one. And bringing a stranger into the house. That's another one that's really tough when you're first at that point. So that's in the book. And a list of the 8 topics that you must discuss is in here as well. You're not ready to buy the book, that's fine too. You can just write me and or give me your email address and I will be happy to share. I have a free ebook with those 8 topics.
And guys, because we are at the library, we do have the book. So we have 3 copies.
Oh, awesome. So thank you for attending. And there's my phone number, my contact information, and yes, I do. All right, so now we're at the point where I'm going to ask a question, and the first person to give me the correct answer will get a copy of the book. Thank you. Thanks for coming today. I'm very glad that we were able to get together. Thank you.